Across the sales kickoff season, I've been having some really interesting conversations with sales professionals and sales leaders around the world about ghosting, that really frustrating time when your customer absolutely completely disappears on you. In the old days, we used to call it black holing, but one way or another, you've had ongoing conversations with a customer. They see your value. They're excited about your solution. Things are going well over the course of the first month, 2 months, 6 months, 10 months, a year and a half. And then at some point, everything just comes to a grinding halt and they literally just sort of seem to vanish. They don't reply to emails. They don't respond to outreach of any kind. You try to do the whole send flowers to the assistant thing. Been there, done that. Um, but one way or another, there seems to be an epidemic these days of customers, quote unquote, ghosting on us. And I think when this happens, one naturally has the inclination to think like, what did I do wrong? Was it something I said? Was it something I didn't say? What should I have said differently? How could I have done a better job of, articulating our value, or done a better job of sussing out your needs such that I created a more resonant solution? But this is a really interesting thing that we often tend to sort of blame ourselves, or at least try to solve for something on our side of the equation. Here's a really interesting idea, or at least thought, that I've been running, sort of putting out there and getting reactions. I'm getting a lot of sort of heads nodding to this, which is in many cases when your customer disappears like that on you, and then they sort of reappear. One of the things we often find is the reason why they've been avoiding you has nothing to do with you at all. The reason why they're avoiding you is because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed very specifically because they looked you figuratively, at least through a camera lens, in the eye, if not in person, and agreed to your value, agreed to the value of your solution, agreed to its fit for their needs, agreed that this was the right thing to do. And then at some point in their then effort to move that solution or that purchase through the complexity of their own internal organizational decision-making system, they ran into some sort of obstacle or person or problem, question that they didn't fully anticipate, or they didn't appreciate, or they maybe appreciated and anticipated, but just assumed that it wouldn't be a problem, that they would have either the credibility or the clout or just the ability to get past it. And it turns out for whatever reason, they've run into some sort of problem, which means that they can't get this thing moved down the field, or they can't get it across the finish line. And frankly, they're embarrassed because they've told you no problem. They've told you they're excited and that this should be no problem. And now what they're finding is that they don't have the kind of pull maybe, or the influence, or the whatever credibility, capability that they thought they had. And they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed either on behalf of themselves and their lack of ability to get it done, or they're embarrassed on behalf of their company and its inability, it seems, to just make what they feel to be good decisions. And I think this becomes a really interesting thing to not only diagnose, but ideally to prevent in the first place. Because when your customer's embarrassed, no amount of ROI calculators or doubling down on your value is probably going to get them out of that situation. Again, this is so much about Framemaking, isn't so much customers' perceptions of you, but customers' perceptions of themselves. And so rather than running away from this, what if we ran right at it proactively? In fact, what if we were to use language with our customer and maybe specifically, or at least tangentially, called this out? And working with other customers like you, one of the things we find is that, you may be super excited about this, and I'm excited that you're excited. We've seen a number of companies run into trouble inside their own organization when this deal got to this particular point, or to this particular stage, or to this particular question. And just to kind of head off that problem in advance, I'd love to kind of walk through with you sort of what we've learned from other companies about how they avoided that problem, because the steps they took were actually pretty smart. And I think they might apply to you. At least I want to get your thoughts to it, get your reaction to it. So the idea is we take on this role of guide or Sherpa or coach to proactively not only address, but to mitigate or hopefully eliminate in advance the kind of embarrassment that your customer might feel when they realize they didn't have the ability to get this decision across the finish line that they thought they did. And so this is really, in the book, we call this an "it turns out that" audit, which is just a wonky way of saying, let's find out all the ways it turns out that your customers could wind up feeling embarrassed, and see if we can proactively head them off at the pass by providing your customers that kind of guidance and coaching. But it's a really different way of thinking about ghosting, which is not something you did or didn't do. It's something your customers proved unable to do. And this is why they're frustrated. And they really are. They're not frustrated with you. They're frustrated with themselves or their company. They're thinking like, this is why we can't have nice things. So show your customers, this is how you get nice things. help them get to the finish line and help them feel like they have the agency and the power or the ability to move things through their own organization. And if you can be the agent that helps them feel that about themselves, it's very likely that they'll ghost you this time, and even more importantly, that they won't ghost you the next time.